there is true estrogen, which is a class of compounds. There's more than one. Then there's, and that's endogenous. Then of the exogenous, meaning outside your body, estrogen, we classify it into the chemical kind, like all the plastics, and then the kind that nature makes, which we'll call phytoestrogens. Phyto, not from little dogs, but phyto, the Greek word for plant. Phyto. I'm just kidding. I knew you knew that. I knew you knew that. All right. So, an estrogen molecule and an estrogen receptor are built exactly. If my fingertips all had little molecule ends with charges on them, if it was positive, negative, they would all be attracted. If they're all positive, they would all repel. So the shape of a molecule is determined by the strength of the charge at the end of the tips, and the shape of a receptor is the same. And so when a molecule matches the receptor, it locks onto it. Now those molecules don't have charge anymore. The other charges are coming into play, and the receptor changes form, and that's an activated receptor. All right? So it's not just when they lock in, but when those things lock and the charges are now neutralized, other charges change the shape of the receptor. A phytoestrogen may only match 3 points. So it doesn't close down and change the shape of the receptor, but it blocks it. So if I want to get to this tree and I want to check the bark and you guys just keep getting in my way, I could bump my way through, or I could just say, all right, and back off. So a phytoestrogen, when there's 10,000 of them for every endogenous personal estrogen going through your blood, they fill the receptors, but they don't actually activate them. And so now you've got circulating estrogen that can go anywhere else. The pituitary gland, which one of his jobs, sits there with a counter, estrogen, you know. It's just measuring what's going through the blood, and it says, I count, you know, well, at that hour I counted too many, so it's going to send out a hormone to slow down the estrogen flow. So by taking a phytoestrogen, you can actually reduce the body's endogenous estrogen, because it will turn down the flow in the pituitary gland. It sends a message to the hypothalamus, which goes down to the adrenal glands, then it goes over to the ovaries. Everybody reset, and then estrogen, you know, and now it's at the right rate. And so a phytoestrogen can reduce estrogen levels. It doesn't activate it. So these are called Serms, S-E-R-M, selective estrogen receptor modulators. For a short time, when you take a Serm, the endogenous estrogen is circulating, so there is extra estrogen not in receptors. But once the pituitary clicks in, that level goes down. And the liver is given a signal around between 2 and 4 in the morning. The liver gets a signal and everybody shifts, and then it goes into detox. That's why people wake up 2 and 4 in the morning and they go, with a jolt. It's their liver going into detox, and it wouldn't jolt you if you didn't need the detox. That's like too much of this, and your liver is overworked. So now when they check into the detox room, the workload is big. At that time, the extra estrogen is then, it's called conjugated. It's met with other molecules, bile salts. It's dissolved, and it leaves the next day in your feces. It sits in your gallbladder, waiting.
What does, sorry?
The excess estrogen will be sitting in your gallbladder by the next day.
So for years I ate soy products and my estrogen levels were like through the roof and my full hormone. It might have been other things, but soy also works as a phytoestrogen, right? Or is it different?
Soy has compounds which are Serms. So at the same time they will block estrogen receptors, fill them, but they will not stimulate their activity. But if you have no estrogen, if you're deficient, some of the Serms, some of the phytoestrogens can very slightly activate because the body's looking for estrogen. And it'll say, well, that's enough for me, and it'll slightly activate a receptor. But it's mostly the use of Serms is to reduce circulating estrogen. People with breast cancer, which have on their cell wall estrogen receptors, and those estrogen receptors are drawing in estrogen to activate the cancer, those can also be blocked using soy or phytoestrogens. So you can find papers about black cohosh and soy for estrogen type cancers, which people are terrified of taking foods with phytoestrogens
They
in
tell
it.
you not to.
It's they're wrong. It's the exact opposite. Those foods will actually block the receptors on the cells from real estrogen activating the cancer. So I don't want to say everybody email me and I'll send those papers out. Learn how to search soy isoflavones and cancer and SERM. If you put that in your search, at least you need at least 3 things in a search so that you don't get 10 million, you only get 10,000. So if you do soy isoflavone plus and SERM and cancer, you should be able to get just a small number of papers and it'll show you that.